Hey everybody, this is Diane. Hello and welcome to Biters.
And this is Marnell, and I've got nothing.
Hey, we are hashtag alive.
We are hashtag alive. We've taken a much needed hiatus for a little while. I still could do with some more time off, but I think that'll happen after the new year for me, at least work-wise, not podcasting-wise.
Yeah, I was kind of going to talk about whether we wanted to try to do any podcasting this coming weekend, with it being the holiday weekend. We can talk about it later.
I think we'll play it by ear.
I know there's definitely some stuff that we're looking at wanting to do for Biters. I would really like us to think about doing the new version of The Stand.
Yeah, I kind of want to too. I really, really love the original, and the cast in the new one looks amazing. But I haven't watched it, but I kind of hear that they left out kind of a character that I really love. So, the Trash Can Man.
Did they really?
I think they have kind of a character that's kind of like the henchman or whatever, but he's not all boom de boom, you know?
So the Trash Can Man was made hot take, right? I read the book, didn't watch the series. But the Trash Can Man was one of the most memorable characters in the book.
He is played by what's his name, who was in Fear the Walking Dead? Played Max Headroom.
Matt Frewer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So in the original, that was Matt Frewer, and I guess like nobody could do that character justice but him. So I don't know how I feel about that character possibly being left out. So we'll see.
Well, we may have to at least watch the first episode and then make a decision.
Gotta get CBS All Access now. Dang it.
I thought you had it. You were talking with Phil about getting caught up on Discovery.
Yeah, I watched the first season of Discovery, which was not on CBS All Access. They did air that on CBS to get you hooked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep. So.
All right. So tonight we're talking about hashtag alive, which you can watch on Netflix if you haven't watched it already. I didn't realize it when I agreed to it. It's another Korean zombie film.
Yes. It must have come up on my recommendations because of Train to Busan. Either that, or it's because it is actually a very popular movie.
So just to jump on the numbers, it actually this month has become in the top 10 on 90 different countries that have Netflix as a streaming service.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's really popular.
I kind of hope that jumpstarts Train to Busan getting part 2 getting filming.
Well, it's all COVID.
Yeah, I saw where our featured cast member passed her COVID test and is currently filming something else. So they're filming in places.
Well, and they definitely have better control of their pandemic than we do.
Very true.
So that could certainly be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, we don't know when we're going to see Train to Busan 2. I did see the other Real Housewife and her partner, her husband, very socially distanced yesterday, and they loved Train to Busan.
Oh, good.
They had just recently watched it, and I said, "You've got to go back and watch Soul Station." And they were both, "We're not kind of that into animated." And you got to go watch Soul Station.
Yeah, trust me, neither am I. But yeah. I was there for it.
And then you need to be seriously thinking about watching Kingdom as well, because I've heard it's quite good. So
it is. So I binged the whole 6 episodes of it in one night a week ago Saturday, and I have listened to the first episode of Aim for the Head's podcast about Kingdom. So
yes, so just a reminder for people that our friends over at Aim for the Head are doing Train to Busan, or not Train to Busan,
no,
Kingdom. Goodness.
Yeah.
I was distracted because I was playing with the video feed in Skype, because this is really weird, but your feed is really like patchy and weird.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. Yeah,
Huh.
it's really strange.
That is
Anyway,
strange.
so another Korean zombie film. Kingdom is set in medieval Korea. This is set in South Korea. I'm assuming 2019, 2020 because it was filmed in 2019.
Right.
What was your rating?
My rating was 4.4 ramen noodles with sesame oil.
Now, I rated it a little bit higher than you did, which kind of surprised me.
Interesting.
So I rated it 4.7, 3.5 millimeter headphone jacks out of 5. Because nobody has a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack anywhere anymore.
I have like 3.
Of course you do. You still have
Actually,
PCs.
I'm using them right now.
Because you still have a PC.
That's true. That's true. Anyone with like an iPhone, yeah, they're phasing those out. So
I will. Oh, they've been phased out for a couple of models now. I actually do have an old set of iPhone headphones that have an adapter that have the new plug-in adapted to a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack.
Huh.
So, and I don't know where they are right now, but that makes that old set of headphones useful on the new phones.
Well, so my Yeti mic, I'm plugged into my Yeti mic.
Uh-huh.
And I actually just recently switched from over-the-ear earphones because after we podcast for an hour or more, my ears start to hurt because headphones don't fit my head. I need like a foam block or something to hold them up because like my ears are too high, I guess. I don't know.
I'm sure we could get one from like an executioner's chamber or something. Because don't they have to put
just
like wet sponges underneath
right.
the...
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. There we go.
After
No,
Donald Trump is done, there will be a surplus, I'm hoping, of execution tools.
Oh, I thought we were having a hard time executing people because you couldn't get the drugs.
Yeah, that's why they've proposed all sorts of other lovely things like electrocution and firing squads and gas chambers and...
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, sorry to get political, biters. Here we are. This is why we do the Real Housewives of Alaska now, so we don't get political on biters, and that was my fault. Anyway, I rated it a little higher. Kind of surprising. I enjoyed it. I can't say that I was on fire about it the way I was about Train to Busan, but it was good.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what dropped my rating is I loved Train to Busan so much that I was just like, okay, as exciting as this was, because like in the first minute we're smashed into the zombie apocalypse. You know, there is no hesitation with this movie. And I absolutely loved. I was like, all right, we're getting into it right off, But I don't know, I found Train to Busan a lot more interesting, and maybe it's because there were so many other different characters in Train to Busan, and on #Alive you really just had the maybe 2.5, I guess.
Yeah.
Humans.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Huh. Well, it had some good numbers. I don't know what its budget was, so I can't compare its earnings to its budget, but according to its Wikipedia entry, the earnings for this movie have been $14.7 million US, and it was released in South Korea in June and then released on Netflix in September. So that's pretty healthy earnings for a pandemic year with not a wide theater release.
One, it had to have a kind of a low budget because think of how small the filming area was.
Oh,
it was like
that's true. The
block.
sets were pretty small. Yeah.
Yeah. And
although they had lots of extras.
Yeah, they probably did have a lot of extras. I maybe unpaid extras. I was
going to say maybe they paid them in ramen. I was craving good ramen after this movie.
Right? Yeah, I was like, because like, even their instant ramen in other countries is really, really good. It's nothing like our instant ramen. It's probably because of all the different things that different countries can put in them and can't, and I don't know. But the other thing about #Alive is this was filmed pre-COVID, and so
Right.
it really hit a lot of buttons with the audiences during COVID. It's just so interesting that this was done before COVID, and all of a sudden we're all stuck in our houses because of a pandemic.
So there was a scene in particular, and we'll talk about it when we get to Rotting Potpourri, where I was like, that is totally a COVID scene.
I'll be interested to see if it was the same scene I think it was.
Okay. So I kept thinking throughout the whole movie, speaking of the title, that I thought it should be called #I Must Survive. And only at the very end, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't watched it, do we understand why it's called #Alive.
Right.
Which I thought was a really cool way to end it.
Yeah, I do too. And the really interesting thing, I think, also is it paves the way for basically spin-off movies. You know, you could follow other survivors and their struggle for survival during the zombie outbreak.
And they made it seem like this zombie apocalypse was not fairly widespread. I mean, I think they said 50,000 people in the whole country.
See, and I have to think that, like, it's kind of like in the initial days of, I kind of think that they underestimated it, like in the initial days of COVID, where it was like, oh, it can't possibly be that widespread, you know?
The effects are a little more obvious than asymptomatic COVID, though, I will say that.
Right. But, I mean, unless they couldn't possibly know because... oh, what was I just watching where they kind of, what was it? There was some major catastrophe that just happened where they thought more people had died. Oh, it was we had a really, really bad mudslide here in Southeast Alaska because of all of our rains. There was the side of a hill or a mountain collapsed in Haines, Alaska. And initially it was 6 feared missing or dead overnight, and because of the weather the rescue attempts were hampered and everything. Well, the next day 4 of the 6 people checked in,
and I hate to be horrible because it's very sad that 2 people died, but most people wouldn't consider that a major catastrophe.
No, but here in Southeast, I mean, like, I think there were 12 or 13 houses that were lost in the mudslide. So for a tiny little town like Haines, Alaska, that's massive. And so, you know, in the first 24 to 36 hours, they thought that, you know, 4 times as many people were missing or dead. But
how many days were we into the ZA in this? Because I know we were more than 20 days in, because the last memory that I have of a day flashing on the screen was day 20.
Okay.
And we were way further into it than that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that just looking at the apartment complexes in that area, just if you kind of looked behind the actors and actresses when they were like running down the corridors and stuff, like there were thousands of units. And so I just, for something that spread so quickly in such a densely populated area, I can't imagine that 50,000 was the final tally, you know? Like, I'm like, they're either lying or underestimating things.
And, you know, we're probably harping on this for no reason. I don't think there's going to be a sequel. I'll be very surprised if there is.
Really?
Yeah.
Because of how well it did, it wouldn't surprise me to see it either get a sequel as we know it, or kind of a Soul Station kind of sequel where somebody animates a sequel.
I kind of feel like they've told the whole story, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, but they could tell other people's stories.
But how would they be different?
You could have a family, or I don't know.
Dude, you're reaching.
Yeah, I am. There are more creative people out there that could tell a story. More creative than me.
All right, I am going to share a little bit about our writer and director. And actually, so we have two writers, and then our director is also one of the writers. So our director is Il Chu, and we're both going to completely demonstrate how poorly we understand the Korean language and how poorly we pronounce it again. It looks like his name is actually Hyung Il Chu. I don't know. I'm not quite sure because I don't know what order they're supposed to be said in, but he's listed as Il Chu in IMDb. He has a pretty small list of director credits. I want to say when I looked him up, he's got he's got 7 assistant director credits, and then he's actually only got 2 director credits to his name, which is Jin, a short film that he also wrote, and then #Alive, which is a film that he co-wrote with a guy named Matt Naylor. So I'm going to go to Matt Naylor's stuff because you found an interesting thing about Matt Naylor, and there's a huge tie-in with this movie. So I'm not quite sure where Matt Naylor is from. There's not a lot about him. I mean, he's definitely Caucasian. I don't know if he's European or if he's American. He has 4 director credits and 6 writer credits. Really, honestly, the only thing that I had heard of was #Alive. Mm-hmm. And then you found that he was also credited for this movie alone, and you said we should watch this movie and compare it and #Alive. And I said, it's very interesting that you say that, because what I actually read was that Matt Naylor, and I'm going to call him Il Cho because that's what he's referred to on IMDb as, they got together and adapted Matt Naylor's script for Alone and turned it into #Alive.
And what's funny is when I sent you the trailer for Alone, and there are two movies on IMDb from 2020 that are named Alone. We are talking about the zombie thriller Alone,
which has Donald Sutherland in it looks like.
Yes, Donald Sutherland. When I sent you the trailer for that, I assumed it was the other way around. I thought #Alive came first, and then they were like, "Oh, Americans, let's redo the movie,"
Right.
And no, Alone came first, and then they did #Alive.
And it looks, oh my goodness, my dog Smalls is being ridiculous. So I'm looking at the listed cast and just making a very quick run through the cast. The only person that I really recognize in the cast is Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, me too. And I also thought it was interesting because I had been looking at a French movie called The Night Eats the World that was from 2018. And so a lot of people on IMDb have made the comparison to that movie and the similarities, because it's a guy stuck in an apartment during the zombie apocalypse. They're fast zombies. There's a pretty girl across the way he starts to communicate with, and so it's very, very similar. And a lot of people on IMDb seem to like The Night Eats the World better. So
interesting.
I will probably have to watch that one also. It looks like it was on Prime Video. But you asked me, is it in French or is it subtitled? And the trailer that I saw was either dubbed in English or it was in English. And then, of course, you and I have the discussion that there must be a setting on Netflix, because my #Alive that I watched was dubbed in English, and it was dubbed in English very well, and yours had subtitles.
Yes, and I watched it twice because the first time I was trying to work and watch it, and pro tip, you cannot work doing the kind of work that I do and read subtitles at the same time. It's not doable.
It's not.
So I actually ended up watching it again today.
So I'm going to have to figure out if that is somehow a setting in my Netflix, or if Netflix just understands that I don't like to read subtitles.
That is exactly what I was going to say. So Netflix understands that I'm the reader and you're the audiobook person.
Exactly.
I'm the reader and you're the person who's like, it counts if I watch the black and white version.
It counts as reading the book, I swear.
Yeah, well, apparently Netflix has that setting.
Yep. Yep.
All right, so going a bit counter to, I would think, what people would have assumed, we both picked Yubin, who is the female actress or the female character that comes in, probably a third of the way into the movie.
Right.
As our featured cast member, because we both thought she was a really great character.
Yes, I loved her. I loved her character, and I watched actually an interview with her, and that did have subtitles.
And is it Shin Hai Park or is it Park Shin Hai?
It's Park Shin Hye.
Oh, Park Shin Hye. Okay.
Yeah. And that was I had to like rewind the interview a couple of times because they say it so quickly. So the last name is either hyphenated or not. And what's funny is you kind of get a little bit different stuff, whether you hyphenate the last name or not. And I say last name, but they call her Park. So
okay.
Everyone refers to her as Park, which actually like kind of seems like that's their last name because her brother, it's Park something.
Oh, you're right. Park Shin-won is her brother. So you're right.
Right.
And I seem to remember when we were discussing the Train to Busan that the convention, at least when we see Korean names in English publications, is that the last name is published first and then the first name comes after that. So I think you're right. I think it's probably Shinhai Park. But
they refer to her as Park.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's like referring to me as Steiner. Be like, hey, Steiner,
yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's a thing, but so I'm going to refer to her as Park.
Which is totally fine. I'm cool with that. But it is interesting that her brother is Park Shin-won, which makes me think that Park is probably their last name. Yes. I agree. Yeah.
Yes. So she is a triple threat. She is an actress, singer, dancer.
And apparently a model as well. So a quadruple threat.
A model. Yes, I forgot about that. So she is kind of best known for a couple of roles in Korea. She was on a melodrama called Stairway to Heaven in 2003 and Tree to Heaven in 2006.
Now, was Tree of Heaven related to Stairway to Heaven, or is it...
I'm not sure.
Just a coincidence that the names are so similar?
I think it might be a coincidence. So I actually thought she was much younger.
I did too. Yeah.
So she is 30 years old, and in #Alive, she looks like she is 16.
Right. I agree.
So I thought that was interesting. She has been in, she's done a ton of work in film and television.
And I'm going to interrupt just for a second because it looked to me like it had all been Korean. Like I didn't see anything where she had any real English crossovers.
No.
Okay.
No. I don't see that at all. But so yeah, everything that she's known for is are Korean TV and movies, but she has a pretty prolific career over there. So I watched an interview with her. I think she was doing the shoot for W magazine. So she's still big into modeling. Her Instagram is absolutely beautiful. So English speakers can find her at SSINZ7 on Instagram. And the English translations are a little wonky when you hit see translation on her posts. So she's got 2 adorable cats. She seems to get flowers a lot, but she is so gorgeous, like #Alive totally played her down. She is just, I mean, the only word that comes to mind is elegant. I mean, she's just beautiful. The interview that I watched had something really interesting. You know how we like to highlight charities that our actors and actresses are do work for. So she has 2 charities that she works with. She actually has 2 centers named after her, one in Africa and one in the Philippines. They're the Shinhee Center, and they are a library and audiovisual hall. She sponsors children in Africa and the Philippines. And she donates her, anytime she has a appearance fee, she donates that to these centers and the sponsorship of these children in Africa and the Philippines.
Cool.
So I just thought that was super amazing. Somebody, who's, for me, is so young. She's so down to earth and just a totally lovely person. The other charity she partnered with, and I think it's Hitachi Appliances, and she donates washers and dryers to firefighters, to firehouses.
I am not going to make any vulgar comments about Hitachi.
I know. They said it so fast, and I don't think that they actually put the brand name, but that's what it sounded like on the interview that I watched, KBS World on YouTube. But so apparently they do a lot of firefighting with chemical foam flame retardants. And so the firefighters get covered in these toxic chemicals. And when she found this out, she partnered with this company to donate washers and dryers to firehouses so that they could launder their equipment or their uniforms. So it would be, less hazardous for them. So I just thought that was amazing. She's just a lovely, lovely person.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And at the risk of being completely superficial, lovely to look at as well. I'm looking at one of her photos on her Wikipedia page right now.
Oh, yes. She just, like I said, elegant. She has the most gorgeous style, like her makeup. She's an animal lover. I mean, like, she's just amazing. She needs to cross over and do some American work. I would not mind seeing more of her. She seems like a wonderful person.
Oh, sorry, rattling pages here. Do you have anything else you would like to say about her, or shall we move on to Whisperer's Corner?
The only other thing that I would have to say about her, she has another movie that was recently done for Netflix called The Call. And that kind of looked like an interesting movie. They call it a thriller, but the premise of it is a woman makes a phone call, and she's connected with a woman from the past in her phone call.
Oh, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, and so there's actually an American movie that's very, very similar, only the guy actually gets, he's using a CB radio, and he gets connected with his father using the same CB radio in the past. And so, and it's almost like what was that one... Keanu Reeves and they write letters to each other and put it in the mailbox, and one gets it in the past. And
no clue. I'm thinking of the Dennis Quaid movie, because there was a Dennis Quaid movie where there was communication between like a father and son through time. That was the one where he talks to his father in the past. The guy Dennis Quaid is the father from the past. Yeah. He's like a firefighter and he died. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, similar kind of premise, but The Call is supposed to be a thriller, and I just based on, like, the IMDb photos, I'm like, this looks like a really, like, nice movie. Like, I'll be interested to see, like, how they turn it into a thriller. So, that might be the next Korean movie I check out on Netflix, The Call, starring Park Shin-hee.
I would say The Stand is probably my next binge.
Well, of course.
All right. So Whisperer's Corner. I missed it. I remembered hearing about it, and then I saw it again, pardon me, in the news today. There was a Walking Dead holiday special that was apparently also a fundraiser that was recorded as with Chris Hardwick hosting. It is available on AMC Plus. I started watching it a little while ago, and Emily Kinney does a lovely, cheery version of a holiday song. And then I'm partway through the 10 years of The Walking Dead sung as the 10 years of, or the 10 days of Christmas. Or
Oh my goodness.
well, the 12 days of Christmas, but they make it 10 years. So here we are. It's pretty funny so far. So it's on the list. You can watch it. You can stream it if you've got AMC Plus. I'm sure if you've got regular AMC, you have access to it again as well. That would be the land of cable, and I'm not sure how that works anymore. So, Annie Lincoln revealed in an AP interview that the first movie shoot for the Rick Grimes movies is finally supposed to start shooting this spring of 2021. So it sounds like if everything is on schedule, we should have it by the end of 2022. The first movie...
God, that seems like such a long time to
I
wait.
know. And, you know, I kept seeing these articles that popped up, and I only read one of them, but it basically said in this holiday special when Andy Lincoln was on it, or in the fundraising special, and I'm not sure if they're one and the same. I think they are, but I'm not sure because I've just started the holiday special. Anyway, apparently Andy Lincoln says that he regrets leaving the role of Rick Grimes, that his friend keeps saying, his kid keeps saying, take me back to Georgia. I want to go back to Georgia.
Aw.
You know, I don't know how much of it was him joking and how much of it is that media outlets are reporting it as a serious comment, because I didn't see it in the context of him actually making the comment.
So I actually, I saw that, and I actually thought it was just clickbait until, like, I kept seeing that headline over and over and over. And again, it could be clickbait because that's how they get you. You know, that's going to be the thing that you click on. So, yeah, I don't know how serious he was either, but he definitely said it.
Yeah. But again, I mean, it definitely made it seem, when you read the actual direct quotes, and I didn't see it delivered, it certainly made it seem like it could have either been serious or it could have been him just saying, yeah, boy, I was a fool, and my kid keeps saying, I don't want to be with you, I'd rather be back in Georgia, and then he was kind of joking. I don't really know.
You know, and it kind of also makes me wonder a couple of things about, like, he regrets it now, but of course at the time that he did it, we all completely understood his reasoning behind it. You know, he had spent nearly a decade on this same show, and this wasn't, you know, the place where he lived, and, you know, it was so hard to go back and forth between his home and Georgia. And of course now that the show is ending, I wonder if he has the regret of, oh God, if I'd have just hung out for 2 more years, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's got supposedly 3 movies in the works. We'll see what Gimple does with that after they get the first movie finally cranked out.
Yeah, and isn't that ironic that he'll be working longer on the movies than he would have if he'd have just stayed on the show?
The series, right? So there was a new book that came up in the Walking Dead news, and I thought, oh God, here we go again. I have to spend more money putting stuff on my Kindle. So it's a book by an author named Ling Ma, and it's called Severance. And she said that she had binged The Walking Dead and she was watching Terrence Malick movies. And I'm going to admit what a horrible human I am that I looked back through Terrence Malick's listing of movies that he has directed since the 1970s, and I haven't watched a single one. So I'm a horrible person. But anyway, this author was imagining like what it would be like if he had written a character that was doing a voiceover of a zombie apocalypse story. And that's what the novel is. And it actually sounded really good. So it may end up on my Kindle at some point. I did just spend $40 on graphic novels. So I think that I'm probably going to give my Kindle a break for a little bit. But yeah, the book is called Severance, and it's by Ling Ma, Lingma. So that sounded really good. The series that came up in response to me watching this movie tonight on my Netflix recommendations is a series called Sweet Home. And it's also a Korean series. And the premise is that basically all of these people get stuck in their apartment complex with, quote, bloody monsters, whatever that is. And there's a plucky teen who's the main character. So, who knows? It could be terrible. It could be another great Korean horror film / series. I may have to at least look at the first episode.
You and I have very different recommendations.
Of course we do.
Because, like, that was not advertised to me at all. Something about serial killers is advertised to me.
Well, I'm assuming that this was advertised to me because I watched this movie #Alive twice.
Oh, so did I.
Oh, well.
And I've binged Kingdom. So, like, why wasn't Sweet Home advertised to me?
Well, it's not like I don't watch murdery stuff too. Jeez, now I'm offended.
I don't even remember what was advertised to me, but I did watch, oh man, I watched Room 2208, which is a 4-part docuseries about the French IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the guy who was accused, and I believe, raped a hotel maid in New York.
Oh, I remember that. I remember the accusation. I remember the charges. And he actually got diplomatic immunity, didn't he?
No, he actually was put on trial, but the charges were dropped because the investigative place that he hired to basically find every little besmirching thing in this woman's background and released it to the media, and then it also followed up all of the accusations he had over in France, and then the human trafficking that he was tied to later.
Oh, my God. So,
I mean, the poor woman never got justice. And if you find any of that triggering, the show, I mean, just left me heartbroken at the wake of destruction that this man has left. And he has gotten away completely scot-free. He has remarried. He is still doing financial consulting. He was just at the Cannes Film Festival last year. Like, it's disgusting. So, yeah, I binged that afterwards. And I can say, well, like, you know, it's a good docuseries. It's definitely not one I would recommend because it was just disheartening.
Watch The Boys. The superheroes that we deserve, not the superheroes that we want. And Marnell and I talked with our friend Phil from Capes and Lunatics about The Boys on our Real Housewives of Alaska podcast this week, which I will get this episode and that episode up over the next couple of days.
So finally, a less serious Real Housewives of Alaska.
Right? Not that Idiocracy wasn't less serious. Oh my God.
Less serious, just not as funny.
Right. Yes. One more thing in Whisperer's Corner. So Gimple says that speaking of less serious, and I was actually a little bit appalled by this, and I'm really hoping that Gimple was joking. So there is a Walking Dead series apparently in the works that is a, quote, comedic take on the Walking Dead world, which just really offends my sensibilities.
I don't know how you're gonna pull that off. I mean, unless you go the way of the Shaun of the Dead, which
that's not what this world is about.
No, not at all.
Yeah, no, I'm really hoping that he was just being Gimple and being a jerk and that it's not legit.
Ugh.
Yeah. All right, Housewives housekeeping. So I would just like to point out that my Rick Grimes Hallmark ornament from 2016, which I bought on eBay just a few days ago, is here and on my tree. And I'm waiting for my Michonne ornament, which now I probably won't get until after Christmas because I'm trying to steer clear of the post office for the next few days. And I will also say that my Wonder Woman 1984 Hallmark keepsake ornament is up on my tree as well. Thank you, eBay. For those who like
Why do I have a feeling that these are not actually Christmas ornaments? These are going to live in your living room year round.
Well, so here's the deal. You know, I was talking with a friend of mine because I was sharing my next thing. And this was a gift to my 14-year-old internal self for Christmas. So I bought the first Halloween nativity set. Now, for those of you who are offended by blasphemy, for those of you who are offended by something that is not a traditional nativity set, this is not for you, and this is definitely not for your grandma. But the manger is a mausoleum. Joseph and Mary are the bride of Frankenstein, and the baby Jesus is Dracula in a coffin. The three wise men are zombies. There are hellhounds.
Oh my goodness.
I'm so excited. So I was like, you know, this is definitely not going to arrive before Christmas. And that's what Epiphany is for, because Epiphany, the date is January 6th. And a good friend of mine said, no, actually, you can leave Christmas decorations up until Candlemas, which is February 2nd. So I think all of these are going to stay up until February 2nd at least.
Okay, what holidays are those? Epiphany and Candlemas?
Oh my goodness. So you are going to ask the person who is not a Catholic what Epiphany is, and I'm not going to be able to tell you.
Okay, it's Catholic, okay.
And Candlemas, or Candlemas, is a Catholic holiday that was pasted over a pagan holiday.
Aren't they all?
Well, again, not to get too political because this is Spider's not the Real Housewives. Yes, many of them are. Anyway, so for anyone who likes a somewhat off-kilter nativity set, I highly recommend looking for the first Halloween nativity set.
I had never heard of these holidays until just now.
Speaking of a more traditional holiday, today is the winter solstice, and we will finally start getting light back in Alaska.
Yes, the shortest day of the year.
Yes, and speaking of another traditional holiday, Friday, December 25th, Wonder Woman 1984 releases in select theaters. I don't know who the heck is going to a theater in this day and age, but it's happening. And it's also releasing on HBO Max. So I know who my hot date for Christmas is, because I'm spending another holiday solo thanks to the pandemic. But that leads to my last news, which is my good news, which is I'm so happy about this. I am getting the first COVID vaccine tomorrow morning at 8:30 at my clinic. I'll be the first person getting a vaccine at my clinic, and I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm a little bit scared because there have been those extraordinarily rare, let me emphasize again, extraordinarily rare allergic reactions. But I'm very excited because I feel like it's the first step to getting my life back.
So I saw a great meme the other night that said, statistically, there will be somebody who gets into a car accident.
I was the one who shared that.
Okay, on their way home from getting the COVID vaccination. And now I'm going to have to convince my grandma that COVID vaccinations do not cause car crashes.
Right, pretty much.
And I kind of feel like, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, people fear all kinds of things that they are more likely to die from having a vending machine fall on them. Like, you know, it's one of those things that's like 1 in like 2 billion or something. Yeah, it happens, but it's really, really rare.
So I'm going to be observed for 30 minutes after I have my vaccination. Mm-hmm. The anaphylaxis cases that have occurred have happened within 15 minutes, and they have been managed. We had an anaphylactic case in Juneau. You and I talked with Phil about this the other day. And while that healthcare worker did have to spend the night in the hospital because of their anaphylactic reaction, that healthcare worker was released the following day and is doing fine.
Yes.
And I feel like this is a small risk to take for protecting myself, protecting my patients, and protecting my friends and family.
And considering two things, I could have an anaphylaxis reaction to shrimp salad because I'm allergic to shellfish. So I put my life in my hands every time I go and get sushi. Um, and two, there are worse chemicals in cigarettes than there are vaccines. You know, that hilarious thing that you and I were talking about on TikTok, where she was singing, these are a few of my favorite things, but it was the words of, like, you know, Coca-Cola and hot dogs and all of these things have worse things in them than vaccines. So, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, if you haven't figured it out by now, I'm very pro-vaccine, and I suspect Marnell is as well.
Yes.
I would have to say that I spent a lot of time repeating to myself today, I will not argue with people online about vaccines. I will not argue online with people about vaccines. Because a friend of mine is considering getting the vaccination. She actually received a call from her healthcare provider because she's in a high-risk group. And she has many friends who have politics that are very different from mine. And they were posting things like, it'll make you infertile. Well, first of all, she's my age, and she has 4 adult children. So she's thinking about her fertility. I'm a little worried. There's no evidence anywhere that it causes fertility issues. And there were people who were going on and on and on about just all sorts of insanely ridiculous conspiratorial things. And I was like, I will not argue with people on Facebook about vaccines. I will not argue on Facebook with people about vaccines. But I did just block a guy on Twitter because, yeah, he was being a jerk.
my mind goes to, hey, you know what probably does cause infertility in men?
COVID! Because it's been documented to cause erectile dysfunction.
Right.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Which I think we can safely say on Biters without me having to edit it out.
But no, as when the vaccination becomes available to me, I will definitely be getting one. And I will definitely be getting one in a place where I can be observed for a reaction.
They have to. I mean, they have to do that for everybody because of the documented reactions.
Right. I mean, I get my flu shot every year, and you know, I've never had a negative reaction to that, and that's when I like just go into the Safeway pharmacy and they jab me in the arm, and she's like, you can wait the 10 minutes or you can go, you know, and I generally go, but you know, I'm usually walking around the store at that point, so.
I will admit I did argue with our mother about vaccinations because I said, okay, number one, woman, you have high-risk conditions that mean you really should be protected against COVID. Number two, what are you thinking? You vaccinated all of your children, and for better or for worse, we've turned out relatively fine.
And she gets her flu shot every year.
Yeah, well, she is what she is.
I'm just saying that, like, the COVID vaccination, especially right now, with the mRNA vaccination, you know, I feel especially safe because they are not injecting you with the dead virus or any part of the virus. So,
right.
Yeah, that's my spiel.
All right. Well, let's go into our goods, bads, and uglies.
All right. Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. And I just noticed I put 2 bads instead of 1 good and 1 bad.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
So why don't you go first?
Okay, well, you come up with a good. So my good was actually Yu Bin, the female character, and I think that there was so much to love about her. She was such a badass. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of things. She was really creative and really ingenious. I loved the booby trap that she had her door set up with.
Yes.
The way that she thought to basically create a rope between her apartment and our Jun Yu, was that his name?
I keep hearing Juno.
Yeah, so I don't know. But anyway,
maybe that's because I'm from Juno.
The dude. So her and the dude, the way that she thought to create basically a line where they could then send a bag back and forth with supplies between the apartments. That was really cool.
Yeah.
There's that scene where she's making her way across the parking lot and avoiding walkers, and the part of the scene that especially sticks out is when she gets into the car and there are zombies coming into the door that she had just gotten into, and she immediately exits through the other door and escapes past zombies. It was great. The action sequences with her getting through the parking lot were really great. And then the twist when we find out that actually she's suicidal too.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was such a good addition to the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I loved the character. I loved the ingenuity, the action sequences. She was a really fun character to watch, and I thought the actress played her really, really well.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen her 20 days or whatever it is before she contacted Juno.
Maybe that is your sequel or your
Maybe
spin-off.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. There we go. So my good was actually Juno's 20 days.
Okay.
So I love in the beginning where he like kind of put all of his food out on the table and he realizes like that he like is not gonna make it,
and he's got the little note from his mom saying, please make sure that you go and get food before we get home so there's plenty of food.
Right. And he chastised himself for that, but I'm like, dude, you did not have time. You literally saw the note with the cash and like 20 seconds later the zombie apocalypse breaks out.
Well, but the feeling that I got was that he had that note and that cash for a while and he'd been messing around gaming.
Oh, okay.
And basically like stayed holed up in the apartment and was gaming, and then the ZA happened and he was like, oh, I had that note and that cash and I didn't do anything, and now I've got like 5 days worth of food if I'm really careful.
So I loved that there were things that I was yelling at the TV for him to do that he didn't do. And then there were things that he did where I probably wouldn't have done that. So the putting the refrigerator up against the door.
Thank you. That is totally in my, that's like the first thing in my rotting potpourri.
I was like, that is genius.
I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that either.
Because you're spoiling food and you're not going to have any cold drinks.
Right. But here's the thing. Like, I don't know what sort of like fire hazard standards South Korea has, but those doors that open out into the corridor actually block people from moving by. For America, you can't have a fire exit that like opens into the fire escape because it can block people coming down. So I was so weirded out by their doors that open out, and apparently he was too, because he rightfully blocked that corridor, which actually saved him.
But he should have used something else, something that wasn't going to ruin his food supply.
Yeah, I mean, he had a bed. He could have totally pushed his couch long ways up against the door instead of using the refrigerator. But I don't know if I would have thought of that as immediately as he did. And but I also wonder how the zombie guy got in. It's like, didn't you lock your door? But the thing that I was screaming at him for is, as soon as the ZA breaks out and you're taking stock of your food and water and everything,
you fill up the bathtub.
Yes. Do you not go fill up every container and your bathtub?
Yes, you do.
And I don't know if that's because we don't have tornadoes here in Alaska, but I guess that's something that they teach down where.
But I've done that. I've done that here. I mean, we have blizzards. We have several days of power outages. If you're on a well and you don't have a generator, you don't pump water. Yeah. So if you're looking at bad weather and you think there's a chance you're in for a days long power outage, you're filling up every water container you can, and you're filling up your bathtub.
Yeah. I was just like, screaming at him to I would have water in my Tupperware, everything.
Every pot and pan. Every sink, bathtub.
And so when they were filling their little pots out on the little shelf they had
Right.
on their balconies, I think I was like, you have nothing but time on your hands. How about trying to rig up something with, I don't know, like 2 broomsticks and like a plastic bag that like funnels water into a larger container that's on your balcony? Like, there were some things that I was just like, oh, that kid's like, he's smart, he's a survivor. And then I'm like, oh my God, you're dumb, you're gonna die. But he's supposed to be like a 16, 17-year-old kid, so
I didn't get a sense of his age, and I was wondering what it was. I mean, he definitely seemed younger than Yubin, but I couldn't tell if he was like an adult son who was still living with his parents, or if he was...
one of his gamer buddies asked him about school. So
no, they said, so are we going to storm the high school today? And they were talking about the game.
Okay.
Because I didn't catch the reference the first time I watched it, and I thought, oh, he's skipping school so he can game.
And
then I watched it again, and I was like, no, they're talking about an element in the game.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. So I didn't get a sense of how old he was, but I definitely felt like he was chronologically younger and definitely emotionally younger than the female character.
Yes.
And he kind of came off as a little bit dense, and not dumb, but like more just an awkward kid who spends all his time gaming and doesn't really interact with other humans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can definitely see, with as densely populated as the block was, that it's possible that these two had not run into each other before, especially if he spends most of his time gaming.
Right.
But I was like, she's a pretty girl. Who doesn't notice a pretty girl?
Well, a kid who's completely obsessed with gaming.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although apparently even my godson with Asperger's syndrome, actually who's on the autism spectrum, I'm trying to get away from using the term Asperger's syndrome because Asperger was actually a Nazi, which I didn't know until fairly recently. Even my godson, who is on the spectrum, apparently really likes anime with characters who are full-figured. So there we are.
That's funny. He had a sweet gaming setup.
He really did, yeah.
My other half is a gamer, and I was like, oh my God, you have to see his setup. And I mean, liquid cooled, the whole bit. Like, it was pretty awesome. And he looked like he had some soundproofing in his room. So, and he seemed like on his social media, he had kind of a following. So it would not surprise me if he was a Twitch streamer.
So they actually said on one of the summaries that I read, and I think it was probably the Wikipedia one, that he was a live streamer.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Someone who's actually trying to monetize his gaming.
It can be done.
I mean,
literally some of the pioneers in the gaming industry, as far as like beta testers and things like that, like they literally have made millions of dollars.
I have to tell you, I had an amazing sorry, I'm getting a phone call and I'm just gonna decline it. I had a really amazing conversation with Martha Southgate from the Southgate Media Group this weekend. We actually did a 3-hour Zoom conversation this weekend. And she has narrated a couple of audiobooks.
See? Did we talk about that on Biters or Real Housewives?
No, I don't think we talked about like her having narrated, but
no.
But I definitely am thinking, I'm going to talk to her about maybe doing that. I think that would be fun. I'm not someone who can do like accents and voices, and I would definitely be the dry person who's reading like the next Neil deGrasse Tyson book or something like that. But I would enjoy that. That would be fun.
That seems to be a really cool side gig. So if we didn't mention it on Biters and you haven't listened to the Real Housewives, you can read audiobooks for money, I know at least for Amazon, because of course they own
Audible.
And so books that don't have, professional narration, but people want their book on Audible. The average Joe out there can make money by reading books for Audible, for Amazon.
Could be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go into my bad.
Go right ahead.
Which is a really small bad, but it really bothered me throughout the movie. The blood is so red. Like all of the blood that's smeared all over the hallways and the doorway and in the elevator and just everywhere. It's so red. And I'm like, all right, number one, we know we're at least 20 days into the ZA and a little bit longer when they get in the elevator together and the blood is bright red.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these zombies have been zombies for at least 20 days and maybe longer. That blood is not going to be bright red.
I think I've had that gripe before on the Walking Dead series, or Fear the Walking Dead, or World Beyond, or something, where I've complained about the liquidness of the blood coming out of the zombies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, liquidity, something.
So it's small, but it bothered me repeatedly throughout the movie. I was like, no. I know that it is like a visual cue, and it's one of those things that they're doing to make it a visual cue during the movie that it's blood, but it's not realistic.
Yeah.
Okay, what was your bad? Since you had two bads written down.
So I kind of already went into one of my bads, and that was the water.
Yeah.
But my other bad was the firefighter climbing the paracord.
Oh, I actually loved that. So tell me why it was your bad.
Do you know how hard it would be to climb paracord? That would shred your hands, whether you're dead or alive.
But it wouldn't bother you if you were dead.
No, it wouldn't bother you, but I just can't imagine that is not cutting into his hands, and that he has enough grip strength, especially if he's dead, to like hoist his body weight on paracord. Don't get me wrong, I know that paracord is strong enough to hold him, but for him to be able to climb it hand over hand, that was a bridge too far for me.
I loved it, but I think it's because I thought the zombie was so cool and so scary.
Yeah.
And because there was a thing in the news early on where they talked about how the zombies seemed to be retaining some residual memories and some skills that they had as humans.
Right.
So they kind of made up for that. Whereas like in the Walking Dead world, and I'm sure we've talked about this before. So in the first season, especially the scene where the zombies are taking the bricks and trying to bust into the store.
Yeah, the department store.
So Frank Darabont was like, no, they would have some retained memories. They would do some of those kinds of things. And Kirkman and other people who were involved in the property were like, no, these zombies don't have any retained memories. They're not going to know to do that. They're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really interesting that in this, they made a point of saying in the script that these zombies seem to have some retained memories and some retained skills from their human lives.
Yeah, and I feel like we talked about that also with Train to Busan, because there was one that tried to open one of the sliding doors. And so
maybe that's a convention in Korean zombies.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Which, I mean, I like that they keep to their lore, I don't mind that. Yeah, and especially because they so obviously, made a point to mention it, that, this is why. And that they sometimes did repetitive things that they did in their daily life anyway. So I'm totally fine with them being able to open doors and windows, especially if they're freshly turned like that. So I have no problem with that. But I'm just saying that paracord is going to shred your hands. All right. So what was your ugly?
So my ugly was actually good ugly, and it was the twist of the survivor of floor 8.
So in IMDb, they call him the Mask Man.
So our female hero, Yu Bin, was right to be suspicious of him.
I wrote that down also. And wouldn't all women, you know?
Right.
I feel like that's just like kind of a given.
And just the twist that ultimately what he's doing is trying to capture and sedate them so he can feed them to his wife and keep his wife, quote, alive.
Yep.
Which is totally the Governor and Penny.
Yep.
Yep. No, I really liked that twist. I thought it was a good twist.
I thought so too, because I was, of course, initially suspicious of the Masked Man also, but not for the same reasons.
Well, when he just appeared out of nowhere, and there were supposedly no survivors on floor 8, although it looked like they had been hunkered down there since the beginning.
Yeah. And, you know, when he was dragging Yubin back to the bedroom after they had both been drugged, I was like, my mind did not go feeding zombie wife. My mind went to kill the boy, keep the girl, you know?
Yeah.
And so I kind of figured that's maybe why she was suspicious of the drink too, is just, yeah.
So I didn't catch it with either watch, and maybe you caught it. How did he manage to poison their drinks and not his?
No clue.
So the thing that I was thinking was maybe there was something impregnated in the glasses before he poured the water.
Yeah. That was the only thing I could come up with also.
Okay.
And I know that laws are very different from country to country about what can be sold over the counter, because I know, like in other countries, hormonal birth control is sold over the counter, and it is not here in the U.S. But I was trying to figure out.
There's a push for that to happen here, and I have mixed feelings about as a prescriber, just because there are risks. But here we go.
I have mixed feelings also, but you know, I mean,
sorry, I totally dragged you down the hallway.
But I'm trying to think of something that would have been sold over the counter that he would have had that would have been tasteless and odorless in a glass of water that
would have been sedating, but not fatal.
Yeah, because I mean, anything that's going to be sold here, I mean, even probably prescription, is going to have some sort of bitterant in it, you know?
I'm trying to think if I've ever taken any kind of prescription that didn't have a nasty taste, and I really, honestly, I can't think of anything.
I mean, even children's, I remember when I was young, and children's grape Dimetap was delicious, and now it's disgusting because they want to deter people from drinking it.
Well, we want to deter kids from drinking it.
Well, there are adults who will drink it.
Yes, there are, sadly. Yes.
Yeah, we have to keep a certain Corcine HBP is kept behind the counter here, because apparently it gives you a high when you drink enough of it.
Because people are ridiculous.
They are. What was the other? Oh, and when we had Walmart here in Juneau many a moon ago, they had to keep all of the vanilla flavoring.
Because there was alcohol in the cooking vanilla. Yeah.
Yes. Isn't that insane?
So I don't know what and again, now we're totally going down rabbit holes here, but I'm not sure what they're doing in the prison system here in Alaska right now, because when I worked there pre-COVID, inmates could not have hand sanitizer because it's alcohol-based, and they would use it, even though it's not the alcohol that you want to be drinking, they would use it as an intoxicant.
Yes. So I think I had mentioned before that when COVID broke out,
a lot of the distilleries. Well,
our building
years
ago
didn't have hand sanitizer out.
They stopped using these hand sanitizer with alcohol in it. It was specifically the non-alcohol hand sanitizer, which is, they had to change that because COVID isn't killed effectively by the non-alcohol hand sanitizer. So, but they had to take it out of our buildings in the public restrooms because people were coming in and stealing it and drinking it.
Well, for millennia, humans have been trying to figure out a way to self-medicate, so why not hand sanitizer?
Yeah, well, dolphins use pufferfish to get high.
That is awesome, and I knew that. You didn't spoil anything for me, but I'm so glad you mentioned that.
I'm just saying, any intelligent species is going to try to check out some way.
All right.
And
What was
speaking of checking out,
your ugly?
This was going to be my ugly. It is not my ugly, but I will mention it since you were talking about it. When he runs out of water and he grabs the alcohol and he's like, "Sorry, Dad."
Yeah.
I'm like, kiddo, you deserve a drink.
Right. And the other thing is, my first thought was, isn't alcohol dehydrating?
I thought so too, but it's also one of those things where I've read books about people being in the cold in Alaska and having only alcohol to quote unquote keep them warm, and it actually does the opposite, but you feel warm.
Right.
So I guess, any port in a storm, I guess.
Well, I'm drinking some peach Moscato right now, and I feel warm. But I'm only going to finish this glass. Yes, because I do have to work before I go into work tomorrow.
Oh, and I wasted all of my calories today on food instead of alcohol.
Shame on you. Lilith is going to be so disappointed.
Oh, there's always tomorrow.
All right, what's your ugly?
So my ugly is a question, but it's kind of a bad ugly because I don't think there's any good answer. What made them all stampede? What made all the zombies stampede?
I'm actually really glad you asked that question because I don't have a good answer either.
Yeah, so, throughout the movie, we saw them responding to noises, and somebody on IMDb pointed out that they were really annoyed that these swarms of zombies could pinpoint a sound to the exact apartment, which regular humans couldn't do.
Right, the ringing phone.
Right. Or her knocking over her shelf,
Right.
But we really didn't hear anything that would have caused them to start stampeding into a building. So I'm just wondering, what caused that?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer.
Yeah. I was just kind of annoyed by that. I know it was kind of used as sort of an interesting, oh, listen, it's raining. And then you hear, it's not rain, it's the zombie stampeding. So, yeah, it was just kind of a weird little moment that I was kind of annoyed by.
So it was a bad ugly.
It was a bad ugly, yeah. Yep.
Well, so starting into Rotting Potpourri, I'm going to say that I did not dig the opening music. The poppy, happy, I thought, this better not be something that's going to happen throughout this movie because I'm not going to be able to tolerate it. But then the music that they used during the opening credits was okay.
Okay. I was going to say, I love that song.
I'm talking about the super poppy stuff that was playing when we first see the male character answering his alarm and being like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was very irritating. But I agree with you. One of the things that I really liked was things went south really fast. There was no backstory. There was no pussyfooting around. All of a sudden, there was a zombie apocalypse going down.
Yeah. His buddies on his I want to say
his game, his first-person shooter game.
Yeah. We're like, oh my god, what's that? It has to be CGI. And then, immediately, he goes out in the living room and it's the emergency alert stuff. I thought it was hilarious that the news was, it had commercials, and even he pointed that out because that's when he went and got his quote-unquote Last Supper. But it was also had stress-reducing techniques.
For the pandemic.
Yeah. Breathing exercises. I was like, oh my god, that's so funny.
I do want to say that I did. So, going into the opening credits, which happened after the opening scene that I was not a super fan of, the opening credits were really cool. They were very artsy, very stylized. The music was appropriate. I loved the way the zombie eye pans out and becomes the door.
And
that was really cool.
I feel like the imagery that they kind of used was ominous without being graphic.
It gave me Dexter feels.
Oh yeah.
It totally did.
Yeah. So the one of the things that I had written down, it was almost kind of in my bads, is so we saw what I assume would be the military basically going in and cauterizing certain sections of the city. They were going in and carpet bombing. And we saw the lights going out everywhere, and even the lights in Juneau's building going out. But then later we see him
playing
and
a game.
Finn, going into an elevator.
Oh, right. Good point.
The 8th floor.
Yes,
yeah.
good point.
Was just like, really?
And we know that was 20-some days into the ZA at least.
Yeah, and so I mean, we saw they have red emergency lights or something that came on in the outside streets, but I can't. Maybe they do. Maybe the buildings are so large that they do have some sort of generator that keeps running for the elevators for people who are disabled. Maybe, I don't know. Because those apartment complexes were ginormous. I mean, coming from small town Alaska, I can't. My imagination can't even begin to fathom that sort of dense population. Yeah.
I definitely saw some things in this that were things that we have seen in or that were echoes of things that we've seen in other zombie movies. And I mean, I think, in every genre things get rehashed. But in the opening where the schoolgirl is like walking toward her mother going, Ma, 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 it really made me think of Summer, the teddy bear zombie, when she turns and bites her mom. When Juneau let the neighbor in, I was like, all right, obviously he's never watched Shaun of the Dead. You don't let the neighbor in.
No. Not that he really let the neighbor kind of barged in.
Right.
And he did a very good job of forcing a zombie out of his place without getting bit before he really knew what was going on.
Right.
I was very proud of him for that.
I do have to say, while he was watching the TV while the neighbor was in the bathroom, and it said something about, they're characterized by horrible bursts of screaming. I fully expected to hear screaming start to come from the bathroom at that point. So good on them for not falling for that. They could have easily done that.
Yeah. And what's funny is my mind also went to Zombieland when he let his hot neighbor in to use the bathroom because somebody attacked her.
Right.
And I was just like, I was like, okay, in South Korea, do they have toilets that have tanks that have the tank cover?
So you
because
can
that's how he dispatched the chick in Zombieland.
I really liked the use of social media, and I thought back to, and of course, I mean, that's what this movie is all about, right? I mean, #alive, and then we see at the end that's a way that they've actually tracked other survivors is by their use of social media and how they've rescued other survivors. But I was thinking about Train to Busan, and I thought, we did see some use of phones and some use of social media in Train to Busan, but it wasn't quite to the degree that this was.
Right.
And I felt like this really showed our obsession with our dependence on our inability to separate from our phones.
Yes.
And the difference from Train to Busan 2016 to this 2019, it does seem like it's really exponentially worsened our dependence on our social media. I know mine has.
Oh, I definitely.
And it's not just the pandemic. It's not just because we're more isolated. I mean, my social media habits have gotten really bad over the last couple of years.
No, I mean, you have heard me going from no TikTok to there are some times where I would rather watch 30 minutes of 1 minute videos than I would a 30-minute television show because, it can be more interesting sometimes. Because dang, if people aren't creative. So speaking of social media, one of my favorite parts was when he was on his, I would assume it would be probably a YouTube channel, or maybe his Insta story or something like that.
Whatever his monetized stream was. Yeah.
Where he's like, I've been stuck at home for 2 full days. And I have to wonder that if 2019 pre-COVID, if we all would have been like, oh man, that's horrible. And now we're all like, you're ridiculous.
That was definitely not the moment that I felt was pandemic appropriate.
Right? I was just like, oh, 2 full days, you poor baby.
So I thought you were going to bring up, and I forgot to mention it, the guy who is leaning out with his selfie stick and who ends up falling and killing himself.
Right.
And then we almost see that with Juno again when he's trying to use a selfie stick and get a better phone signal from his parents.
Of course. Yeah. Like, we all thought that. We all thought, you idiot, you just watched somebody do that and die.
Yeah.
I also was like, okay, she was probably live streaming that when that happened, but would you really leave that up?
Oh, there are plenty of people who would.
Oh, awful.
Okay, I just want to say, damn, the Koreans make scary zombies. They really do. That zombie that was standing in the hallway toward the end, that right before they meet the masked survivor, and you see it as a solo zombie, and it has appropriately old black blood, and it's really scary looking. Just before the wave of the zombie stampede comes through, they just make really scary zombies. The zombies who got the cop, they were scary. Even
the blind zombie was scary.
I mean, I love the way that they make them use their bodies, and you can hear their bones crack, and when it's his neighbor turned,
I'm just so impressed by the movements that they can.
Yes.
Yeah. That has to be a whole specific zombie school training that they go to.
Yes. Korean zombies are amazing.
Absolutely.
And I'm devastated on behalf of the cop that even when he tried to distract the zombies who had injured her so that she could get to her gun and kill herself, that she was not able to kill herself. I just thought that was brutal.
Yeah, I did too. So speaking of kind of brutal endings, did you expect a happy ending?
I didn't, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that was actually what I was thinking of using as my ugly, because happy endings are so rare in in the zombie genre. I did not expect a happy ending. Although the first time I watched it through, when he started getting that flood of messages on his phone, I thought, is his family still alive? And then when I rewatched it, I thought, no, his family died.
Oh, one of the messages did say voicemail from mom.
Okay, so maybe they did survive.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that they did survive.
Maybe they just had a scare in his dad's office then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I did not expect a happy ending.
No, I honestly expected them to either be taken by the zombies on the roof or for them to jump.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly thought that they were going to jump. And then, even then, even when the helicopter appeared, I was like, because remember, Train to Busan had 2 endings.
Right.
It had a happy ending, and it had a not happy ending.
And everybody opted for the miserable ending.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, in the not happy ending, the army wound up shooting the 2 survivors because they thought that they were zombies. And I thought that that's what they were going to do here. But now I'm also like, oh, well... Like, they kind of saw how Train to Busan did the 2 endings, and they liked the...
And actually, we did end up seeing the happy ending, the sort of happy ending in Train to Busan. I mean, there were so many people who died, and it was so horrible, but sort of happy ending in Train to Busan.
Right, but there was 2 endings.
Right. I remember that now.
You can watch the one on Train to Busan, and then you can go on YouTube and watch the alternate ending.
Right. But the alternate ending is the one where the people are killed.
Yes.
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 So for the theater release and for the release that we saw of Train to Busan as the original release, it was actually a happy ending also.
Right. And I kind of almost think that they kind of followed suit with Train to Busan because it was like, oh, well, the audience likes the happy ending. And I'm like, not all of us.
Some of us buy the first Halloween nativity set. All right.
And then
go ahead.
See, like the messages and stuff pop up from his family. I was like, oh man, even the family survived.
Okay, so I was right. There were messages. So I remembered from the first watch through that there were messages that came up from the family, but then the second watch through, when I watched him, using the selfie stick and trying to get a better transmission, and then the family was like, "Oh my God, what do we do now?" I was like, "Oh, maybe his family did die."
Did you notice that when the messages started to come through and they got signal on the helicopter, that Yubin checked her phone and there was nothing on her phone?
Oh no, I didn't. That's horrible.
Yeah, so there's the horrible ending we were all hoping for. But I mean, I don't think there was any mention of Yubin's family at all.
There was no mention of her having like any human connection with anybody.
Right. So she could have maybe not had a family. I don't know. But like, obviously she didn't get any happy messages from anybody.
Okay. I'm going to go to an unrealistic moment.
Okay.
When our big zombie bashes through the refrigerator and gets into the apartment and goes after Juno, and he like throws himself over his balcony and is hanging on to the railing, and the zombie goes past him. Mm-hmm. I in no way believe that a teen to 20-something kid who spends all hours of the day gaming has the upper body strength to pull himself back up into his balcony. Because even at my fittest, I wouldn't have been able to do that.
And they intentionally made him look unfit in the movie. So if you read the trivia in IMDb, the director actually stuffed the actor full of high sodium food so that he would look
bloated and puffy.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting.
Because the actor in real life has a very cut jaw. He's very, very good looking. So yeah, they even made him look unfit, and then they're like, "Oh no, he can totally pull himself up."
Yeah, I was like, no way.
Yeah, nope. Another unrealistic moment that I went to. Where did the masked man get smoke bombs? I mean, he's going to a pharmacy that hands out like tasteless and odorless drugs that knock you out and smoke bombs. Like, what's going on?
Maybe he was a serial killer before the ZA, and that was like part of his kill kit.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, but I was like, smoke bomb. Well, for one, like, what? I mean, other than maybe like obscure their vision, what is the smoke bombs doing? It's not knocking them out. But I was just like, where did he get smoke bombs? And they were like canister smoke bombs. They weren't like, the little, cherry smoke bombs that like, kids light off here.
When I think about it, so when I did mounted police training with my horses, the smoke bombs that the person who teaches the mounted police training classes that I took used were canister smoke bombs.
Really?
Yeah.
I have to figure that would be somehow regulated.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I mean, this guy is a former mounted police officer, and he still rides with the National Park Service on holidays, and he still rides with various mounted police departments like in Mardi Gras and for Macy's Thanksgiving Parade. So he's still got connections. But yeah, I don't know. There we are.
I'll let you Google how to get canister smoke bombs.
Yeah.
I Googled soup porn for our last podcast.
That would be SUPE, not SOUP.
Right.
For the boys.
But I'm sure that the other one is also out there.
It probably is, and I don't even want to think about it.
Oh, we were having a discussion about OnlyFans today, and how women, especially during the pandemic, have turned to making money off of OnlyFans, and they're making a very, very good living. And there's a lot of TikTokers who are like, "Do it! Like, you don't have to show any." She's like, one lady's like, "I make $2,000 a month showing my feet."
Dear God, what am I doing with my life?
So I'm sure that there is SOUP porn out there.
What am I doing with my life? I'm thinking reading for Audible as a side gig. I apparently need to get a pedicure and show my feet on TikTok.
Okay, so there is actually a woman who owns a tree cutting service in Texas, and she's like a bigger woman. She's not fat. She's not, but like, you know, she's solid. Yeah, exactly. And she just like films herself going out and doing target practice with her guns, or like chopping trees down and stuff like that. And she makes, I'm not even joking, 40 grand a month off her OnlyFans.
Like,
40
is she
grand.
Topless, or
the stuff that I've heard of, she's not. She may show more in other, but there are people out there who are willing to pay for a beautiful woman to shoot guns on film. And like, I'm like, you can get that for free. It's the internet. But yeah, I'm like, okay, what's my shtick?
Right.
You know?
This is it, girl. This is all we've got. And I'm not posting the video. I'm just posting the audio. So. Oh. Okay. How can you not like Nutella?
I have never had Nutella in my entire life.
You're kidding me.
No, I am not.
Oh my God.
I know, and I love hazelnuts, so you'd think I like would, but it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, I don't need to like one more thing that's bad for me.
Like
just, you've gone this far.
Hazelnuts and chocolate and peanut butter had a baby, and you took out the taste of the peanut butter. It's amazing.
Look at you and your bad influence on me.
Terrible influence.
No, I seriously have never had Nutella, and like, why wouldn't I? I don't know why. I've never tried it.
It's amazing, and it's only 10 more calories a serving than a serving of peanut butter.
Is it like the same like protein and stuff? I mean, I would
Probably
imagine
not. It's a lot more sugar.
I mean,
right.
It looks delicious. I think that I would like Nutella, which is one of the reasons why I haven't tried it.
Yes. So this gets me to the scene that I thought was totally apropos for 2020, because I have really felt this way more and more as I have become more and more isolated, which is why I'm sticking my arm out for a vaccine that has only made its way through the phase 3 trials tomorrow. It's where they finally are talking on the walkie-talkies, and she says to him, "I'd love to talk about something, anything."
Yeah.
Because you're so isolated and so lonely. And I thought, that's how so many of us feel in 2020.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what you thought of as the 2020 scene, or?
Well, for me, that scene was like he had been talking about almost killing himself.
Right. And she was like,
I
don't want to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
But like, I thought she was just like, please change the subject.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, she had her own demons that she was fighting with, so.
I agree, but I also thought that I want to talk about something, anything was just completely a prescient line.
I think my 2020 scene was I've been stuck in the house for 2 whole days. Like, remember the early days of COVID where it was like, oh my God, we're not going to be able to go out for like a whole month. And here we are like 9 months later.
Right. Almost a year later.
I know. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, I remember just before Christmas last year hearing about the virus that was going around Wuhan, China, and that last diplomatic flight out of China was going to briefly land in Alaska. And it was, yeah.
I swear to God, I told the other housewife, I was like, you know, it's just going to be another one of those things that's scary and it's viral and we're all going to get it and we'll be fine. Oh my God, I was so wrong.
And
I actually told her
a couple
of months ago. Yeah, I mean, I told her a couple months ago. I was like, "You called it. I minimized it. I was wrong. You called it." And now there's the new strain in Britain that they're saying is 70% more communicable than the strain that we're dealing with right now.
Right,
not
it's
more
not
virulent.
more deadly.
Yes, correct. And they're still thinking, as of the stuff that I looked at today, that the vaccines that we have developed will still treat for the mutated strain because it doesn't look like the M spike, which is the thing that the mRNA vaccines target. Doesn't look like the M spike on the outside of the mutated virus is any different than the M spike on the strain of virus we've been dealing with.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's scary to think that there's a strain out there that's way more transmissible coming down the pike, because one person's going to get on an airplane and here we are.
I'm sure they are already here.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a really interesting study that was done, and it was on Rachel Maddow, and it was done based on the wastewater treatment and how they found coronavirus in the wastewater long before we thought it was in the States. Like months. I say long, but it was like a couple of months. They think it was actually here in November last year.
So they also looked at blood donations from December of last year. That's
right.
And they found the virus in donated blood from December of last year. Before we had our first confirmed cases in the U.S.
Yeah.
Speaking of the coronavirus, so going back to that opening where they were showing like brains and lungs and hearts and blood and virus, there were some viral particles that they showed that looked so much like COVID viruses.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch.
Oh, it was crazy, and I mean it was very brief, but I was like, that's really freaky.
Interesting.
All right, I love the scene of them cooking and eating their ramen together. And like I said, when he did eat his last supper of ramen, like early on in the show, I really wanted good ramen. And I did find some noodles in my kitchen tonight, and I ate noodles while I was rewatching, and they weren't nearly as good as real ramen that you get at a Japanese restaurant.
Well, and it also, like, for some reason, anytime I see ramen noodles, we actually had I don't know if it's still there post-COVID. We had a really good pho restaurant.
Uh-huh.
And I had never had it in my entire life up until like 2 years ago. And so now every time I see ramen noodles, I equate it with pho.
So I have to ask you, because my coworker calls it pho. I've always called it pho. I've always heard it called pho. Is it pho or is it pho? It's PHO, guys. Is it pho or is it pho?
I have almost always heard it called pho, and I think it was Anthony Bourdain that convinced me to call it pho.
All right, I'm going to have to Google Anthony Bourdain and see what Anthony says, because I believe you. I suspect you've probably watched more Anthony Bourdain than I have, although I love him.
I had always read it in my head as pho. So I was corrected that it's called pho, and then I watched Anthony Bourdain and was like, okay, I'm going to call it pho.
Okay.
It's not how I say it in my head, but I will try to pronounce things right. And if I'm wrong, I like a biopic, I will totally correct my pronunciation of it.
I don't think I have anything else, but it sounds like you do.
So I had one other thing that I was like, really? You've been in your house for almost 3 weeks now and you haven't done that one thing that like would really, really help you out. They both, in both apartments, they had windows that faced the corridor, that they had blinds up, but they hadn't like blacked them out or anything. And they were constantly like, not constantly, but there was like 2 times where like there were zombies outside that window that they like froze because they were afraid that, the zombies would like take note of them inside. And I'm like, yeah, that would be the first window I would black out.
Right. And I wouldn't worry so much about the windows that looked out my balcony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being 4 floors up. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, me either. So that was really my only thing that I had left in my notes was just, I don't know. I think we've all seen enough zombie movies and TV shows that a lot of us would have a pretty good chance of survival. It's only up to our various abilities and cardio at this point.
So I did write in my notes that I was completely convinced that Yubin would survive in our zombie apocalypse. I'm not completely convinced that Juno would survive in our zombie apocalypse.
Me either. I mean, he only survived because of her when he was going to commit suicide. But then also, I think that, she was the more able of the two. So
Most definitely.
She had some legit climbing gear. She had the ice axe. She had the
Well,
carabiners
and
and the rope.
she had climbed. She had done some climbing.
Right. And it was funny because he broke into that one apartment where the people were climbers. And I'm like, really? What are the odds of there being two people who were like legit climbers? And I'm like, then I looked at like how many apartments there were. And because I was thinking, I don't think there's two people in my entire neighborhood that would have legit climbing stuff. And then I was like, okay, there's like 10,000 people in like 8 square blocks.
Maybe it's a big thing in South Korea.
It totally could be, and maybe it's something that they do to get away from people. I can totally see that.
Now we just have pandemics.
Yeah, now we're just like, we don't want to get away from people. We want to be around people.
I have mixed feelings. I mean, I'm horribly lonely, but there's also times where I'm like, I'm good not having to socialize.
I have found myself, I enjoy being a recluse, but I find that
you like having the option.
I need to push myself further when I get the opportunity, because I went and picked up a prescription the other day, and I decided to grab something from the deli. And so I got my prescription and I went over to the deli, and there was like 4 people standing in front of me in the case that I wanted to go to. And I was so like annoyed and flustered, and I got my one thing. They left and I went and got my one thing. And then I went to go to the checkout, and the fast checkout, the 10 items or less, was like, I'm closed. And I didn't notice the light was off, but okay. So then I went to the self-checkout where there was like one left. Like the store was packed. There were so many people milling around the check stand area that I was just like, oh my God, get me out of here. And I got to the one self-checkout that was still available because it was packed also. And I was so flustered that I put my one item down on the scale where the bags are instead of the scales where you're supposed to start your stuff out on. And like, I couldn't put my card in right or push the right button. I was just like, normally I'm a super pro at self-checkout because, before the pandemic, like I didn't want to, have to make small talk with people. And now I'm just like, I got one item. I literally was in the store for like 10 minutes and I was having an anxiety attack. I was just like, what is wrong with me? And it's because I'm, I've been almost solitary. At least I have another person in the house, for good or for bad sometimes. But yeah, I think I probably need to push myself. I am going into the office this Thursday because we have a new deputy director, and we're going to go have a meeting with him. And when I say meeting, there's going to be 4 of us in a large room. We're going to social distance. It'll be just fine. But so I will be going into the office this Thursday for the first time. Wow. 4 or 5 months. I've literally been in the office less than 5 times since March.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
Wish I could say that.
Like I actually just signed up for DoorDash. We have 3 restaurants in Juneau that deliver with DoorDash. This episode not sponsored by DoorDash, but
or so the first Nativity Halloween set.
So the 3 places that deliver with DoorDash are Papa John's, which already delivers, McDonald's, and Papa Murphy's. And I wanted a Papa Murphy's pizza, and I did not want to leave the house, so I got DoorDash with Papa Murphy's. And yeah, I did, because I've had Instacart since long before the pandemic. And so I'm just like, oh my God, I almost never have to leave my house. And they've said even after the threat of COVID or pandemics has passed, the people who are working from home successfully will be continued to allowed to be work from home. So because the state is trying to save money with their lease footprint. So they're going to cut down on office space. So if you are successful at working from home, which I have been, we will continue to be allowed to work from home. And I kind of think that I want to. And on one hand, it's kind of scary where I'm like, okay, I'm totally becoming a recluse. And on the other hand, I'm like, it's way less stress. So I don't know.
Yeah, not an option for me. Unless I start doing things like chart reviews, which isn't going to happen.
And if I can start to get my prescriptions and my alcohol delivered, it's over.
I have been thinking about you because I keep hearing ads for this service I think it's called Drizzly. And it's an alcohol delivery service, but I'm guessing they probably don't have it where you are yet.
I don't think the state of Alaska allows for alcohol delivery. We are pretty buttoned up when it comes to allowing for things like that. Because, I mean, in the lower 48, they've had alcohol, and like in places like California, they have marijuana delivery, So, yeah. And honestly, I actually could get my prescriptions brought to my car, but it seems like, there are a couple of things that I do want to go into the store for that, the Instacart delivery person doesn't seem to be able to find as well as I can. And they say that they're out, but I know that it's on an end cap somewhere.
Or you end up with kind of rando stuff that you don't remember putting in your cart. Does that happen to you? That happens to me.
At Costco, they made a substitution. Instead of the peanut butter pretzels, they sent me a picture and said, is this okay? And it was a different brand of peanut butter filled pretzels. And I was like, yes, that's okay. And then I got some sort of like fruit and nut square.
I have like all this yogurt in my fridge, and I'm like, how did that happen? I don't know how that happened.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of working from home, because of course there's always work for me to do, I really do need to go do some work so I can go to bed at a semi-reasonable hour.
Yep. And I did not anticipate Skyping over my laptop, which has a camera, because Di and I like to see each other now because, Well,
it was nice when we were talking with Phil because we didn't all talk over each other because we actually saw each other and had some social cues, which was kind of nice.
Right.
So,
and I mean, why not? It's just you and I. We can sit here with like no makeup and stuff. It's fine. So I did not anticipate that. So my battery light is screaming at me because I did not plug in before this. So I was like just frantically checking that a minute ago going, oh God, don't lose power in the middle.
Well, we have once again successfully talked longer than the movie actually ran for. So
yes.
Everyone have a good holiday week, whatever holiday you celebrate, and we will be in touch with you probably shortly after the holidays.
Yes. Hopefully for Biters, I'm thinking that we'll watch the movie Alone.
Sure, we can do that, and I do really want you to think about The Stand.
Yes. I do want to see it, yes, absolutely. So,
and then for Real Housewives, we need to finish up Citizen 4 and Snowden.
Together.
Yeah.
So go ahead and go watch those and have a merry, happy whatever.
Yes. and until next time,
just remember,
take it one dead day at a time. We do that better when we don't see each other.
Do we? I thought we did it great this time.
No, we do it way better when we don't see each other.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.